Welcome to the Saturday Night Live Afterparty. This week, we'll be taking a look back at SNL's December 12th, 1981 episode from its 7th season with host Bill Murray and musical guest, The Spinners. I'm John Murray, and with me this week is improv and sketch impresario, Dave Buckman. Dave has studied, directed, performed, and taught in many of the nation's premier sketch comedy haunts, including Chicago's Second City, I.O., and Annoyance Theaters, and is currently running Austin's ColdTowne Theatre and Sketchfest. You can connect with Dave on Twitter at Dave Buckman, and you can connect with me at snlpodcast.com. Enjoy this full-length, supporter-only version of this week's discussion. And if you like what you see, you can find all of our unabridged, ad-free video coverage of Season 46 exclusively on Patreon and Subscribestar/SNL Podcast. It's our supporters who make this show possible, and we are so thankful to everyone who's already come on board. All right, enjoy. Dave, it is wonderful to see your beaming face.
You too, buddy.
You don't look overly frostbitten. I hope you didn't lose any toes last week.
No toes, just a lot of groceries,
Yeah.
and a bit of my humanity as well.
Yes,
So.
yeah. Well, when we have to resort to drinking our own urine, it takes a little bit of our dignity with it, I'm sure. Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, you're Austin based, which means you were in the epicenter of Texas Snowmageddon 2021.
Yep. Yeah, sure was.
Yeah. Not that there was anything fun about it, but do you have any fun anecdotes that you want to share from your experience? Like, what was it boots on the ground to see snow for like probably the first time in your life? No, I know you're from Jersey, so you've seen
I'm
snow.
from Jersey.
Yeah.
I've seen plenty of snow. I lived in Chicago for a long
Right.
time. So I've seen snow, but I tell you, my body has definitely changed.
Yes.
But the problem is that Texas is not used to the snow.
Right.
And so they just don't have the infrastructure. They don't have salt trucks. There's no one like coming to break up the ice after it freezes. So we were like living in a refrigerator for 3 days straight, 75 hours, no power, no food, no water. I made it out into the slush once a day to go get some food and come back. We're wearing socks and then bags and socks on our feet. So it was intense, but we got through it. But yeah, sorry to bring the show down.
No worries. You managed to avoid a Donner Party situation, so we'll call that a win. And let's get on to funner things here. Talk to me a little bit about the state of your theater and Sketchfest going into 2021, because obviously
Right.
COVID has thrown a big monkey wrench into everything. So what do you got cooking for 2021?
Well, ColdTowne Theatre is very much on the grid these days. We're teaching online classes, doing online shows on Twitch, and doing a lot of corporate workshops for diversity, inclusivity, and equity for businesses as well through improv. So that's kind of keeping us afloat for now. We're looking for a new space. Our theater space got sold from under us since we couldn't afford to pay rent. So we are out of there. We're looking for a new space for 2021, but we do have Austin Sketchfest. It's online this year on our Twitch channel. And it's coming up April 20th through the 24th. We got some great headliners coming to that show. We're excited about them. Last year we had James Adomian and Anthony Tamanik and Jamie Loftus. So that was a great show, and we had a great weekend full of troops from UCB and Second City and IO sending in live shows and tape shows. So we're doing that again in April.
Can you announce any headliners, or are things still too much in flux right now?
Well, we've got Meg Stalter. She's contracted. We just agreed. She's a TikTok star. We're very excited about her. And we also just got Atsuko Okatsuka. Atsuko Okatsuka.
Okay.
Atsuka Okatsuka. She's an amazing Japanese American stand-up out in LA. She came to Out of Bounds in Austin a couple of years ago, and I just fell in love with her. She was fantastic, and she's hosted a couple of our Asian performers on her show as well. So we have a good relationship with her. And then I think we might be getting Craig Kukowski of Drunk History and Kevin Pollak have a podcast as well. I think they might be joining us as well. So we're still talking to them. But you can follow all that out at ATX Sketchfest or at ColdTowne.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay. So, I'll be looking forward to hear what else starts coming together as you firm up your lineup, but that's a pretty good start. That's going to be a good show.
Yeah.
But it is all online. So it is like, what do people have to expect if they get a ticket for this? What's the process like to actually, go and
There's no
enjoy it?
ticket. It's free to stream. We get some
Okay,
city grant money to help us
gotcha.
put it up. So we are making it free to stream. We're asking for donations. We have a Patreon channel for ColdTowne to kind of keep the theater afloat. So if you
Mhm.
wanted to join a Patreon for ColdTowne, you can find a ColdTowne. There's an E at the end of that. And join our Patreon, and that would be the biggest way you can help us uh, keep afloat for now until we have a new space and we have regular live shows again.
Very good. Okay. Now turning to our episode of the night. This was your selection. We were batting around potential ideas. You were really kind of locked into this era, the season 6, season 7, the big
Yeah.
transition, the second phase of SNL. We ended up landing on the Bill Murray episode from the 7th season. Now, what
Yes.
what was it about this that you felt like this was something you wanted to break down?
Yeah. Well, I got Peacock. Um, Actually, I got a Roku, which came with Peacock,
Mm,
and so I just started like, you know what? I'm just gonna start at episode at season 6, and just start like watching them back to back. I didn't realize until a little into it that they took out. There's only half hour, 45-minute episodes. So they
right.
take out there's no musical guests, which kind of sucks. There's some really good musical guests that you miss out on, and
Mhm.
and maybe one or two sketches that come in under some rights issues as well. So you're only getting about maybe half the episode on Peacock. But as I went through them, I started like trying to bring it because this is where the era I started watching every week. I'm trying to figure out like I wonder what my first episode was, and as I hit this Bill Murray episode, I realized this is it. This is the episode. This is I remember everything from this sketch on uh, in the back of my mind, and a light turned on. That I was like, well, I think we were talking about doing the Tom Hanks Keith Richards episode from
Right.
the late '80s, but then this was my first episode, and and in a sea of just mediocre to tepid episodes, this one jumps out with energy and fun, mostly from Bill Murray,
Yeah.
bringing everybody up to his level, which was a great thing to see. So I really sparked my interest, and I really just wanted to go deep dive because this also was Michael O'Donoghue's last episode. He gets
Mhm.
fired after this episode as head writer and producer. So I think it's a very special moment in Saturday Night Live history where it's definitely a break. It's the last of the old guard,
Right.
and the '80s version of Saturday Night Live kind of takes over officially after this episode, and you can kind of see the change going on Peacock and kind of seeing the lightness that is in the room now that Michael Donoghue, the Prince of Darkness, has left the building.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it really gets you. There's so many things going
Mhm.
on underneath the scenes of this episode too. So I'm sure we'll talk about it.
Yeah, let's not shy away from the meta because this was just coming out of a very tumultuous phase where they retooled and Dick Ebersol took over, but we're only now 7 episodes into basically his reign. So the show's still finding its footing. They changed up a lot of their tradition, which always throws me when I watch this particular season, like how much
Hmm.
Dick Ebersol kind of wanted to pee on things and make it his. Um, So, yeah, there's definitely a lot surrounding the show that, is to me as interesting as just, watching it and trying to look at it as a time capsule of the time and figure out why Gaddafi was such a big deal this particular week. So, yeah,
Right.
we're gonna run the gamut tonight, and it's a stuffed show. They had lots of sketch fare, lots of performances. They threw in the whiff and poofs because apparently that's hip and edgy. So yeah, we're gonna break it all down, and we probably don't need to introduce it anymore. Why don't we just jump right in?
Let's jump right in. Let's do
Okay.
it.
For our cold open, we get a quasi cold open. They've been doing these, sponsored by title cards in place of proper cold opens, but I'm pretty sure this is the last one. So I don't know if that had anything to do with Michael O'Donoghue or not, but I believe this was the last time we get a title card. This time they're goofing on the phone company for not really innovating, but throwing money at them. So that's how we
Hmm.
jump into the show. Any, wonderful insights on our faux cold open?
No, I just think that it's very weird that we're still talking today about these giant communication companies needing to be broken up. Back then it was the phone company was the only way to kind of have any kind of mass communication and keep in touch with people.
Mhm.
And now we're still talking about that with Facebook and Parlor and Google, and I wonder if we're ever going to end this. this abusive system we're in of just like whoever controls how we communicate is always like kind of exploiting us. Anyway, so yeah, they've been hitting the phone company for some reason all season,
Mhm.
in these title cards. It was it's just an old reference to a, a perennial problem, I guess.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I
Yeah.
have no great insights. I'm glad that this seemed like subversive and sticking it to the man at the time. Feels kind of tame by comparison. Like this is a pretty gentle ribbing, maybe by today's standards, but it got a big laugh. Like people seem to dig it, and it gets you into the show quicker, which means they can tack on an extra sketch. So
Yep.
there's a lot of reasons why I didn't hate this as much as I love the tradition of the show and really hate it when a show kicks off without the live from New York line.
And no Don Pardo either.
Right. Yeah. So again, it's just Dick Ebersol changing things for the sake of changing things. Um,
Yeah.
I get that it's a production savvy move. Like this is way cheaper to produce than a whole big sprawling cold open. But yeah, there's just something to be said about the tradition of it. So if I was going to knock it, it's just why do you got to change something? If it ain't broken, don't mess with a winning formula. But that aside,
Yeah.
it gets us into the show pretty quick. So moving right along, we get a monologue from Bill Murray, and he just wants to tell you something about Santa Claus. It's Bill Murray doing Bill Murray shtick. What'd you think of this?
Well, it's fun because, when he says at the top instead of at the end of the monologue, we've got a great show for you tonight, you believe it. You believe
Mhm.
it because Bill Murray really believes that we have a great show. You could feel
Yes.
he's up there. He's high on the show. He
Mhm.
knows what's coming and he's excited about it and he feels it and he feels the audience and they're excited to see him. He's excited to feel them and he feels very proud of the show in that moment. And it really kind of brings the energy up in the room. And then the other point when he brings out Santa and Santa's like here for the night at Bill Murray's request, which is a great concept, um, is that line where he goes, I called him up and Santa says, "What time and what do I wear?" Which
Right.
is a line they've used a lot on that show. I think Paul Schaefer uses it a lot as Don Kirshner in
Mhm.
the early in season 5. But the fact that he's saying that about Santa and Santa's saying, "What do I wear?" which is it's so meta
Right.
of a joke and so funny to think of like, why does Santa care? He's going to wear the same thing every time. So I just love that. But my big thing about this sketch is who is that guy? Who is that guy that did all the old security guard
Yeah.
walk-ons with 0 to 1 lines
Um,
throughout the 80s,
he has I did actually look this up because he has like 130 SNL credits. So you're right. He's like
right?
the extra Olympic champion. He's got a very generic name, but it's not coming to me, but I can find it here if you just bear with me. So while I'm looking it up, I'm gonna give a shout out to Ben Dosima, who has reviewed all of these classic episodes in fine detail and
Hmm.
he picks out stuff like that. So I'm just pulling up his page and there you go, Andy Murphy. So yeah, Ben Dawson, but to the
Andy
rescue.
Murphy.
He has all those little tidbits and trivia that you could want for this era. So people should check out his blog, Existential Weightlifting, because that's where I go when I need to bone up on my SNL lore. I don't have much to add to that. I think that this gets over just simply because of Bill Murray's enthusiasm. The fact that he comes across so sincere as this kind of pitch man, hype man, glad hand, just
Yeah,
schmoozer. Like he's everybody's bud. And it's funny because it actually is sort of sincere because he is known to be kind of generous that way about building up the people around him and just, being kind of a team guy in this kind of
yeah.
material. So it is just kind of funny to see them apply that a little tongue in cheek to Santa Claus, who really doesn't need, anyone talking him up. Like he's Santa Claus because everybody loves Santa Claus. So, I liked it. It was simple, it was straightforward, and it just capitalized on what Bill Murray does so well. So
Yep,
yeah,
I
you can't
agree.
help but, just have some infectious enjoyment of seeing Bill Murray just come out, glad to be there at a time when the show needed allies. They needed some of the old guard to come back and endorse it and just let everyone know it's okay to embrace this new cast. So there's a lot going on here too. Just him coming in and being
Yeah.
gung ho rather than maybe feeling, a little bit of weight over the show. He just removes all of that, clears it out. And I think that's probably why the show soars a little bit more than the rest of the season.
Yeah, and he was one of those guys who was generous in coming back. Not,
Yeah.
Aykroyd didn't come back for a long time.
Right.
Belushi comes back in this season early on, but in the Halloween episode, but doesn't say anything.
Right. Yeah.
But he'd already hosted once at this point in season 6 to try to lift that cast's spirits as well. Of course, everybody gets fired right after that episode, but
right. Not his brother,
but
so at least that.
Not his brother, right? Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure he's also very excited to play with his brother,
right, of course,
as well in this episode. So,
yeah, Bill Murray, he's a cool guy, and honestly, if we're gonna dig into meta and our history with the show, Bill Murray is the reason why I sought out SNL, because he was a personality when I was a kid from the movies that I loved, and once you become a fan, you find out like where'd he get his roots, and then you start seeking that out.
sure.
So the contribution that Bill Murray made to the show, just in being a good ambassador, a good sport, I think you can't say enough about it, because there's
Right.
I'm sure a whole generation of like Ghostbuster kids that probably found SNL just because of just how personable and fun he is to watch. So
Absolutely.
now getting into the show proper for our first sketch.
Yes.
Tales of the Unlikely, Chapter 7, The Libyan Menace, chronicles the efforts of 3 would-be presidential assassins. What'd you think of this?
Well, it's a little all over the place. There's a lot of really fun things and a lot of really problematic things in this sketch,
Okay.
but I'll start with the positives. I love a full cast sketch.
Mhm.
I love a sketch where we see the entire cast. I think everybody's in this at some point. You might catch Fred Stoller, popular stand-up from the 80s and 90s, as an extra in that early part of the scene. And the little things that Bill Murray is doing throughout the scene. There's like, he has his cackle during
Yes, his maniacal
transition.
laugh to change the scene. Yeah, the
Oh,
fade out. Yeah.
It's so funny. It's so funny, that cackle. I watched it so many times at this point. It's one of my favorite parts of the episode, is that little cackle. And then and something else you don't see very often is a 3-set sketch, where very rarely do you see that anymore, where we're going to like, maybe they go back and forth on some of these talk shows these days, but you rarely see like 3 full sets of a story like that.
Yeah.
Those are the good things. I think the bad things, I would say I don't know if, obviously the problematic accents, and I don't think the writers or the actors really had a take beyond CIA equals conspiracy theory and Middle East equals violent jihad.
Sure.
I think that was kind of the whole hot take they had
Right.
for the issue of terrorism and bribery in the White House. So they didn't really do much with that, which I think is problematic with a lot of comedy in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, until Reagan starts really like amping stuff up. Then people have something to react to. But in those early 80s things, everybody was very complacent and not really having any satirical takes on stuff.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I found a lot to like, but it was kind of sprawling. And the way that they kind of frame it in sort of this old-timey thriller, sort of like with the musical stings and the slow fades, which they needed to give them time to get from set to set. All of that stuff, I don't know if it helped keep it lively, but I at least had some fun with the idea that they had, where the US government is so like accommodating and just oblivious that these guys could walk around, attempting all this, very blatantly. They're doing a terrible job of hiding. Like, they're not very incognito. They're in their, their whatever, their robes and all the rest of it. And the government is just more than happy to indulge them and just cater to them and take them wherever they want. I found it interesting to have that kind of contrast. Like, I like the idea of the CIA having a help desk where anyone can just go and get up to speed on, clandestine operations. No ID needed, just we're here to help. We're the CIA. We're your friendly neighborhood CIA. I liked those kind of ideas that were infused throughout it. But I think this probably worked a lot better at the time, when maybe people were more worked up about this issue. And also, about the bribery and corruption scandal that ends up being this guy's comeuppance at the end. There's a lot more here that probably worked better at the time than us watching it, 35 years removed.
I think we have a much more nuanced take on terrorism.
Yeah.
40 years later.
Yeah. I think there's a bit more to say on that topic than maybe they had back then. But I got to give them high marks for the sets, for just how ambitious this was. Like you said, how many people you had moving through the frame, and how many people got juicy characters that have some sort of accent, even, even if through our modern lens, some of that stuff maybe is a little cringy. I like seeing everyone doing the work, like Tony Rosado, someone that you don't see a whole lot of because he didn't have a long tenure on the show. It's cool to see him, get a lot of material tonight.
Yeah, Tony Rosado throughout the season is really trying to step up
Right.
in many different ways. Sometimes he falls flat on his face a little too much, but he does some really good acting in this season.
Mhm.
That it's a shame more people didn't see more from him, because he was swinging from the fences every night. Of course, self-admittedly, he says he was on a lot of cocaine at the time,
Sure.
which comes across in his performance a lot. But he really went to bat every single time.
Yeah.
He tried to hit a home run every time. So good on him. And the person who's playing in this scene, Richard Allen, was an actual person who's on the take in the White House. So
Right.
they're trying to hit him and getting score a couple points that way. So
Right.
good for them for trying, but I think it kind of falls flat in the satirical side.
Okay, so let's keep rolling here because we got a lot of show to get through here.
Yep.
We get another live sketch. After the cancellation of his show, a manic Tom Snyder breaks with reality.
Yes.
So the big question that I want to pose to you:
Yes.
Dan Aykroyd, Tom Snyder, or Piscopo Snyder? Do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I think Piscopo's was better.
Okay.
I think Piscopo's was better. It was more accurate. I'll say that.
Mhm.
It sounded and felt a lot more like Tom Snyder than Aykroyd had become a caricature, I think, at some point. You can feel Aykroyd's presence in that performance more than you feel Piscopo in his performance. I think Piscopo brings a level of Tom Snyder here that was I think it might be better than Aykroyd's.
Okay.
And funnier. It's a funnier sketch too.
Yeah. Well, it's a manic version of him, so you can go places
Yeah.
with the character that way. That's a hot take. So I'm way more familiar with Aykroyd's version because it's just that was a perennial sketch.
Right.
Um,
Are you familiar with Tom Snyder?
well, yeah, like
Okay.
he was following
Through-
Letterman on CBS when I was young and
Okay.
tuning in for Letterman during his second coming after he left NBC.
Gotcha.
So, I've watched enough Tom Snyder to know what they're reaching for here. I didn't realize that the late night wars had started 10 years before I realized they started. I didn't know there was a whole thing with him when Letterman, took over late night from his daytime stint. So that was cool. That was new to me, but, yeah, no, I know, I get the character. I agree with you that it was really strong. What I couldn't quite figure out was, did I like it because it was manic and he had, his laugh just kind of went a few beats longer that just makes you feel he's a little more unhinged? Like, is it how interesting the state of the character is, or is it Piscopo's impression that was winning me over? I don't know, but like you, I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I did too. I think he also had great support, which Aykroyd
Mm.
usually doesn't get in those
Sure.
sketches.
Yeah.
He's usually tied in with a host playing
Right.
themselves or doing a very loose impression of somebody else.
Yeah.
Where Tony Rosado and Kazurinsky and Ebersol are like really good actors,
Mhm.
so they're really kind of bringing a lot of support to the to the scene as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think the thing about this scene that really gets me is I feel like this is one of two of Michael O'Donoghue's goodbyes to America.
Okay.
That speech at the end that Piscopo does feels like a goodbye speech from O'Donoghue.
Okay.
Through Piscopo, through Tom Snyder,
Yes.
to America.
I'll be
You know,
back,
and
basically, right? Like, you haven't
I'll
seen
be
the last
back.
of me. Yeah.
He says, as long as there's geeks and weirdos and sideshow freaks,
Yes. Okay.
old Tom will be around to give them the national exposure they deserve.
Very nice. Yeah, I didn't, my gears didn't, go in that direction, but that's
He says, so I've made couple mistakes. Is that any reason to fire me? I mean, it's
you're right. It's all right there for anyone that knows what
all
was
right
happening
there.
behind the scenes.
Here's how he wraps it up. And now from the late shift at 30 Rock. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being there. Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
Goodbye,
Nope.
everyone.
It's all there.
It feels it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all
yeah.
there. That's exactly what it is. Okay, so that's even a little bit, more special knowing that, someone was trying to be subversive and get something through that they felt passionate about. Yeah, very, very interesting. So I like this. I didn't pick up on that subtext, but I liked it for what it was. So I thought this was kind of like the first solid win of the night. That, like, aside from
Sure.
Bill Murray just being charming, I think this obviously worked better than our mystery thriller epic opener that we just had.
Yeah, this was a home run.
Okay, let's talk about our musical performances. The Spinners, with an assist from the house band, perform a medley of Then Came You, I'll Be Around, and Working My Way Back to You.
Yes.
What are we thinking?
This was cathartic for me. I cried. I
Okay.
cried. The Spinners are my number 3 band of all time, behind the Stones and Black Crowes.
Mm.
And I've seen a lot of Stones shows. I've seen a lot of Black Crowes shows in person and online. I'd never seen the Spinners perform. I just have all their albums and all their songs and just love them to death and know them all by heart. But seeing them perform for that extended period of a time was breathtaking to me because I love them so much for so many different reasons. And just to see them working their magic on a crowd, not in front of like the band, but like just 5 guys with the microphones doing choreography with those microphones. Yep. 5 different guys providing harmonies, backup, each one taking a different lead. I love teamwork. I love precision. I love power, stage presence, choreography, harmony. Just everything about it works for me. And it was soul touching, that performance for me. And I'd never seen it before because even though I had seen this episode, I did not remember anything before Weekend Update.
Very good. Well, I'm glad you connected with it.
Yeah.
I was feeling very nostalgic. Growing up, the best local radio station we had out of Detroit was WOMC, the oldies station. And obviously, anything revolving around, Motown or those kind of like group sound, that, I just absorbed that for, the first 10 years of my life. So, these songs are all very, familiar and they warm my heart. I always get a little scared when a band comes on that's maybe about 10 to 15 years past their prime and you're wondering if they're going to pull it off. You see there's maybe a bit of a beer gut going on. You're just wondering, is the energy, is the magic not going to be there? And they wowed me. They didn't miss a beat. Like, even though, they're looking a little worse for wear, the falsetto was sharp, the harmony was perfect, the choreography was right on. Even though these are simple shuffles they're doing, it still said, hey, you guys got it. You haven't missed a beat. So I'll give them high marks. I enjoyed this a lot.
Yeah. And Bill Murray's favorite band too. At the same time, you could feel it when he introduces them. He's excited. He's on record as saying how much he loves the Spinners. So he booked them for this episode. That was a gift to him. It was a gift to himself.
Hey, if you're Bill Murray, you can certainly pull a few strings. If you're going to come back and grace the show, you get the musical performance you want. It
was great.
Yeah, no, this was fun and just a good energy at this point in the show. I thought it made a lot of sense and was a good booking, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that they could still pull off the performance and everything was just sounding crystal clear. So yeah, good.
Awesome.
Moving right along, Father Guido Sarducci for MX5 tampons.
Yes.
What'd you make of this?
It's so funny. I love Father Guido Sarducci so much. I had his album growing up. I had his cassette that I would listen to in my dad's car all the time. And so I love how funny he is and his takes on everything. This was, of course, a parody of a Brenda Vaccaro commercial for tampons, which is very taboo at the time. Do a tampon commercial and have a star do a tampon commercial. So it makes sense. It's a funny parody to who else would be doing, who's the lace person you would expect to be doing an ad for tampons? Certainly a guy, certainly a priest.
Right. Yeah.
Why not Father Guido Sarducci? But when I was doing a little research for the show, this is he did 31 appearances on Saturday Night Live. He's by far the most of any recurring character. That character's been on Laugh-In. That character's been on Fridays. That character's been on Smothers Brothers. He's like the Detective Munch of sketch comedy, Father Guido Sarducci. And I just love him so much. And this is very sweet, just like a quick, fun, silly idea.
Right.
It's a minute long, and it's a nice piece of writing.
Yep. Yeah, a minute was just about perfect for this. I liked it too. I wasn't thinking of it in terms of like who's the worst pitchman? It'd be like a male priest, like who just should not be able to speak to this particular topic.
Right.
But there's something charming about how Father Guido Sarducci is kind of like the no nonsense priest. Like he's street smart, he's a little world weary. And so like, he just like says it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of truth, in what he has to say. And he's not a squeamish kind of a, character.
Mhm.
So
He's hip.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. He's your buddy priest. So there was something that just made sense that he would have no qualms about hawking any product. Like, that as a vehicle for the character to just do what he does, I thought made sense because there's a part in this where he kind of has to take some shots at all the other companies, and they say you
Mhm.
can go swimming in theirs or whatever, but a trampoline, like really,
Yes.
like it's almost like he believes in the product, and I just find that really really funny.
Yeah. Well, his stock and trade is products to sell. He's always trying to make a buck,
Right.
this Father
Yes.
Guido
Yeah.
Sarducci.
Yeah.
But it's never like malicious or like conniving. He's always like, look,
Mhm.
here's a product I believe in.
Yeah.
I think this is going to help your soul and your salvation and my pocketbook.
Right.
So no
Yep.
one gets hurt here.
Yeah. No, this was fun. This was a lot of fun, and it's not the only time we see the good father this evening.
Right.
So let's jump into SNL news break. Again, let's just change things for the sake of changing them because we know
Yep.
that it's going to annoy John in 30 years. Brian Doyle Murray, at least he's a familiar face at the desk. For his opening salvo, he goes all in on the Gaddafi name spelling controversy. What'd you think
Yes.
about what Brian Doyle Murray was bringing to the desk?
I love Brian Doyle Murray as an actor. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. I don't think he was great at the update desk.
Mhm.
So that whole Gaddafi spelling, it's funny, but it takes way too long, and it's so easy.
Mhm.
But it's like he started doing his own desk pieces, I think, because somebody knew that update wasn't working. They had
Right.
him by himself. They had him with Mary Gross. They had him with Christine Ebersole. They had him by himself again. And I don't think it works when the anchor does their own desk piece. I think didn't
That's
Michael
fair.
Michael Che tried that
Yeah.
a season or two ago, and it bombed. No,
Yep.
it was a funny concept that it bombed because it's like, no, that's not what we want you. If you want to do that, give it to somebody else,
Right.
or get off the desk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as silly as that got, I don't think it was a great fit for Brian Doyle Murray behind that update desk. I don't know who else they would have had do it.
Mhm.
I do like him so much, and I do like watching him do things all the time. But yeah, it's rough.
See, now, yeah, no, that's fair. I think maybe the reason why he was as much of a mainstay as you had during this season at the desk, was probably just because he had a bit of that newscaster presence.
Sure.
That's not to say that he could turn the comedic twist on it very well, but he does. I believe him as a newscaster, and maybe they were
Sure.
just looking superficially at his presence at the desk as opposed to just how well he could get the joke over. So yeah, there was something that just wasn't clicking this
That's
whole
fair.
season.
And maybe it's just the writing. I would have buyed him
Mhm.
as any kind of news anchor for sure. He's got
Mhm.
the voice, he's got the presence, he's got the
Right.
gravitas. But the writing was just not great.
Yeah. Now, I was watching this outing of SNL News Break, and I was trying to contrast it with what I remember from the rest of the season.
Mhm.
And it seems to me that as much as this isn't, anyone's favorite era for the fake news, I felt like his performance was probably as good as it ever got during this. And I know that's not saying
Yes.
much, but
Yes.
I feel like, cause there were some nights where it was just so fumbly and like people were just missing their cues and just talking past each other. It was just a hot mess. And,
Yes.
yeah. And sometimes it wasn't just that maybe the writing was a little weak. Sometimes he would, just kill his own joke just in the delivery. And so
Yeah.
I felt like this was competent and maybe the best we were going to see, during this phase of the show.
I'd say it's a 6 out of 10. That's as high as he got.
Right. Okay. And that's exactly how I feel. I feel like this is the best of what you're going to see. And that isn't necessarily saying much, but
Yes.
we had a couple interesting features that maybe
Yes.
would be Newsbreak saving grace. So let's talk about Joe Piscopo's Saturday Night Sports Spotlight on Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, at this point, Piscopo's doing this sports thing at every episode. Every
Yes.
single episode they throw to him because it kills and it's high
Mhm.
energy. And it's amazing how he can get the audience back applauding and cheering with literally 20-word desk
Yeah.
update desk pieces. So this is a great. This is probably one of the best versions of this one because not only do we get Joe Piscopo live Saturday Night Sports, we get young Joe Piscopo
Right.
uh, in NBC Sports, and we get young Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, and old Muhammad Ali.
Right.
So it was a brilliant concept. I love when Joe Piscopo throws to himself as a younger one, and that first pop of him is wide-eyed and bushy-tailed
Yeah.
in black and white. Joe Piscopo is such a funny meta joke to anybody that's been watching and been a Joe Piscopo fan up until that point. And at that point, I
Mhm.
don't know who wouldn't be because he was clearly the standout of the cast.
Right. Yeah, no, he was doing yeoman's work. This was a lot of fun, and you're right. When they throw to him, not only have they got him done up in the like, "Hey there, swell chap," like the old timey version of him, which is just funny, but
Yeah.
he also brings his voice up a little
Yes.
bit. The younger
Yes.
version of him isn't quite as growly, and I'm like, well, there's a little bit of
It's
performance that
funny.
nobody was asking for, but it works so well.
I
And then
agree.
I'm watching this and I'm thinking about how competently he goes through that really fast-paced dialogue, those like staccato words, and just he has
Yep.
the sportscaster delivery. And I'm thinking, if he wasn't such an asset in the sketch fair, maybe he should have been the one anchoring the desk because
Maybe.
maybe he could have made hay a little bit better. But nonetheless, this was a great vehicle for him. Obviously, they drove it into the ground, but this was fun, and not just for Piscopo's part, but Muhammad Ali, pretty darn
Yeah.
convincing. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. I mean, this is something Billy Crystal doesn't even do for 3 or 4 years later. Doing
Right.
can do both young Ali and old Ali. And it's a
Mhm.
really good impression. I mean, it yeah. I don't know if Eddie Murphy had been doing any impressions up until that point. But this is certainly him like master of voice and
Yes.
kind of a precursor to his Coming to America and Dr. Doolittle
Yeah.
playing multiple characters with prosthetics and
Mhm.
makeup. So good for him. It's fantastic, and it's peak
Yeah.
a little hidden gem of Eddie Murphy's this piece.
Mhm. Yeah. I had to do a double take for current day Muhammad Ali or older,
Yeah,
whatever, the final Muhammad Ali,
yeah.
because I wasn't convinced it was Eddie Murphy. It
Me
was
neither.
he was so lost in the character, and the prosthetic was so good that I'm like, was there a writer or something that I didn't know about that they just thought would work as old Ali? But no, that was him, and he did something with his tongue under his lip, like this,
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
just there was something about what he was doing that was so spot on. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I loved it. I loved the jumping back and forth through time. I thought this was a show highlight personally. So,
Yeah, for sure.
um, how about Mary Gross, Woman on the Street, getting children's perspectives on the holiday season?
The other show highlight for me.
Yeah.
This was, I think, my first sketch. This
Okay.
was, I think my parents showed this to me. I think they must have watched it, taped it. Well, my parents were one of the first people to have those top loading VCRs. So
Mhm.
I grew up with a bunch of SNLs from seasons 1 through 6 on my VCRs. I just watch those anytime. But this one, I think my parents showed this to me because it featured not only kids my age at that point, I was 10 years old,
Mhm.
but also Seth Green is one of these kids.
Yes, the very first one in the red hat.
My grandmother had taught Seth Green as an art student
Oh.
before he got famous. So we knew him, and so it's like, oh, here's this kid that he's on the show and he's being funny.
Hmm.
So I think this scene for me just it hooked me. I think
Yeah.
a perfect example of representation is real because I saw myself as those 10-year-old kids and said, I want to do that. I want to
Yeah.
be funny on TV like those kids. So
Interesting.
yeah, it was beautiful, and I think it's very, very funny looking back on it now. It was funny to me as a 10-year-old. It's even funny to me now as a 49-year-old. So it's yeah,
Yeah, no, I love illuminating the various aspects of your origin story. I think that's Pretty cool. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Anytime you put something out of place in a kid's mouth,
Yes.
like get them to use dialogue that's just too world weary or too grown up or just whatever, acerbic, that always plays. I think that's so much fun. And I think the show understands that this is a really easy win. And there's so many holiday cliches that when you hear them come out of a
Mhm.
kid's mouth, you're like, I've said that exact same thing. And yes, it is that ridiculous. Um, I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't connect with it in that it somehow, set my life on a different path the way that it did for you, but I still thought this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, very good. Okay, back half of the show. We get a live sketch. Tonight's Brook Shields designer fairy tale tells the story of Ralph Lauren's latest design triumph.
Mhm.
What do you think?
Lot to unpack here.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's start with Brooke Shields. Obviously those DoorDash commercials where they're sexualizing a teenager
Right.
fits in with this frame of a fairy tale being read. Um, I get like the Libyans in that first sketch. A lot of stereotypical gay voices.
Right.
Well acted. I love that it's another full cast sketch minus Ebersol, and it's cute for Christmas.
Mhm.
But Eddie Murphy going overboard with that stereotype of obviously no one. This whole season is rife with homophobia and racist humor. It's pretty upsetting and misogynist humor. It's rough. It's rough to watch from a comedy standpoint from 21st century values. But the story is cute. The Elf and the Shoemakers come to life, but it's Ralph Lauren in the fall line. So for me, it felt like a lot of nonsense. A way to tie up a lot of airtime with
Fair
a
enough.
Christmas wrapped around a Christmas theme and
Sure.
wrapped even farther around a Brooke Shields jeans
Right.
parody. There's
Right.
just
Right.
there's a lot going on here. I can appreciate it's a full cast sketch. I can appreciate that it's Christmas time. But I just solid C minus for me.
Okay. My first thought was Mary Gross as Brooke Shields. I thought she did a good job with that.
Hmm.
But I couldn't help but think that Catherine O'Hara was supposed to be in the cast this season.
Yes.
And she kind of has the quintessential comedic take on Brooke Shields from her SCTV days. And so
Oh,
I was just, this has nothing to do with the show, but I was just
sure.
thinking, oh, well, there's an alternate reality where these Brooke Shields goofs would have been done by Catherine O'Hara if Michael O'Donoghue hadn't scared her away before she
Right.
even got on air. So yeah, just interesting, what could have been in an alternate reality. What we got, you're right. Like obviously through today's lens, there's a lot that would be problematic. I try my best to look at these the way that I'm assuming people would have looked at them at the time and just understand that, okay, if this isn't a liability for the sketch the way it would be today,
Hmm.
is there merit in the writing? Is it at least smart in some way? Is it saying anything too clever? And there wasn't a whole lot to go around here.
Yeah.
There was fun costumes. I get that because this would be a little bit more, I'm not going to say taboo, but there would be something a little more salacious about peeking in on gay runway models and Ralph Lauren, and Bill Murray's kind of given eyes to Eddie Murphy at one point. Like there's stuff here that I think a less acclimatized
Yeah.
to that culture people or society would there's something a little more risque about it that was probably amusing, but that doesn't mean that that's anything that we should be applauding at the
Yeah.
same time. So I don't know what to say about it other than I think it was a middle of the road sketch at best, and it probably got more mileage at the time just because of it feeling a little risque, to that culture. But yeah,
Yeah. I think the reason Bill Murray is giving Eddie Murphy eyes is because Eddie Murphy is
yes,
peeling
there's a
pieces
story.
of
Yep.
Muhammad Ali's chin off his chin
Right.
in the middle of the sketch. So every time the camera's not on him, Eddie Murphy's like furiously
Yeah.
picking things off of his face and trying to hide it. So you can see him trying to hide at the top of the sketch and Bill Murray catching it in the
Yeah.
corner of his eye.
Yeah, that's some famous lore from this episode. And you're right, because he has a handful of goo at one point, so he can't really
act the way that he was expecting to because he's got all this prosthetic stuff. That could be part of it. But I'm pretty sure Bill Murray blows someone like a kiss at some point, like just as they're leaving, like see ya, babe, or something like that. Like there was something just sort of like an effeminate little gesture that he gives, which I think probably would stick out way more in the early 80s than it would today. And probably when middle America was still watching SNL, which I don't think that SNL's audience today would blink at something like that. So this was a sketch that is a product of its time and, can probably just stay there. That's my hot take anyways. Okay. So something that SNL did in its early days, we get a performance from comedic juggler Michael Davis.
Yes.
Yeah, when it was still more of a variety fare, occasionally they'd bring in people like this. They brought in Harry, Night Court Harry. What's his last name?
Harry Anderson.
Anderson. Yeah, Harry Anderson. I remember him from the first few seasons. And it seems like every season they have one or two people that they kind of like that they bring in a few times. So this was kind of Michael Davis's heyday. Did you want to see this in a show that was already particularly stuffed?
I'll tell you, not for the sixth time this season. Right. I'm kind of done with Michael Davis by this point. If you're watching straight through, since there's nothing copyrighty about his stuff. He's on every single one of these. Takes up a significant chunk of the Peacock episodes. So a lot of Michael Davis stuff. But so it's funny that you say the word safe, because I think for me, I'm trying to understand why they give him so much airtime that season, right? I think it comes from this edict that they were trying to be, and they even say it at the opening. Instead of live from New York, they have the announcers say from the most dangerous city in America. In America, instead of live from New York. So I think there's this edict coming down to be more dangerous, right? To have more dangerous comedy, which I think why Michael O'Donoghue got the gig that he got, because he was going to bring the dangerous, and he was the dangerous dark mind, right? And so what do they get? What do they get to get that up the danger level? They get a juggler, a dangerous juggler, and that's it. That's as far as they got on that. They had this one guy who was also a dangerous stand-up, I guess. I don't know if you saw this guy in a raincoat. I forget what his name was. He tried to do some weird interactive work with the audience in a different episode. And I didn't understand half the things. He's coked to the gills. This guy. But that's the kind of danger they were trying to do. There's another sketch later on that we'll talk about that's also in that kind of dangerous world that is not actually dangerous.
Right.
Even for then, I don't know what they thought dangerous was, or what dangerous comedy is, or why comedy has to be dangerous at all for it to work. But clearly Michael Davis is milk of toast at best. Nice performer, nice guy, seems like, but I don't need to see any more Michael Davis for the rest of my life. I'm good.
Sure. Okay. My hunch, my headcanon, I have nothing to base this on other than my own
headcanon. I love headcanon. Go.
My hunch is that the show probably had a handful of local acts that they knew, okay, you've got a 40-minute act that you're performing at some theater 5 minutes away. Great. Chop it up into 20 little pieces. And anytime we're coming up short on the rundown, get your ass down to the studio. We might be able to make time for you in the back half. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of where these sort of things come from. Because obviously, even if he was the most fantastic comedic juggler in the world, you would think that they would have him on once and say, okay, give us your best 3 bits and put him into a 2-minute piece and really wow the audience. But the fact that it was just we've got a minute and a half till commercial, go do something. It feels like he's just a safety to have around for that. I think maybe because the show was still finding itself and figuring out how to really handle their rundown as they're reinventing some formats, and just there's still a lot of chaos in the production. I think they just needed that safety net, and I think that's probably why we saw so much of. That's my theory, anyways.
Yeah, but I wouldn't find with Michael Davis once or twice. But the later seasons they have Jeff Stilson on, they have Kinnison on to do some stand up. And those are irreverent stand ups. And I'd rather they do irreverent than faux dangerous.
Right. If the mandate was danger, then yes, there's a lot of comedians that they could have called up if they really wanted to, freak out the censors. Obviously that's not what this was. I don't, we can speculate all day, but we got a little bit of juggling and moving right along to Father Guido Sarducci, who is back and he's also psychic. What did you think of this?
He's doing predictions. He's doing predictions. And we're going to look at his predictions from 81 and what they were and how they panned out. And we're going to hear some stuff from 82. And this is classic Sarducci. Very funny. Just a perfect example of how slow and comfortable this character is. He's just so relaxed and hip for its time. Very relaxed, very hip, even hip for now, I think. And it's reminds me of like the, this combination with him and Bill Murray. It's like the 2,000-year-old man. It's like there's some solid, you can improvise with like this loose list of jokes and punchlines they know they're going to land on, but other than that, it's just a conversation. And Bill Murray also is very loose and comfortable playing the Carl Reiner of that relationship and just setting him up. And it's just a wonderful example of perfect Sarducci. I went after this episode, I went and went to YouTube, and there's a link you can find of both of his comedy albums back to back on YouTube, and they're just a joy to listen to again.
Yeah.
Highly recommended.
Yes. I agree. This was a lot of fun. My hot take, these are two guys that play off each other great. They're casual, their looseness, just how organically they kind of, pick up each other's beats was a joy to watch and fun. The fun that every time one of his predictions misfires, he's got a really casual excuse. Like, like I'm, what does he say? He's like, I'm just the conduit or something like that. Like he's like, these things just come to me. I don't, like take them for what they are. Like I take no responsibility for it. Like there's something so kind of just aloof and nonchalant about it that is fun. And the fact that he would be like, okay, well, none of those panned out, but here's what I got for the coming year. Like I'm going to just set myself up for failure again. I don't know. It was fun. Enjoyed it.
I'd love to see him do one more update before, he's 75. He lives in California. Don Novello, where are you? Get back to the update desk one more time, please.
That would be lovely. I have a feeling that 90% of SNL's audience would have no idea what they're looking at. But
that's happened. That's the best part about that character, because it's not about that. His character is about what is happening in the world and how he can make a buck off of it. And how he can offer you salvation in the process. So I think and I'm sure the Catholic Church could use a good spokesman right now. And I think Sarducci would be a great. We need his voice right now. Now that Carlin's gone, we need Sarducci.
All right, we will put that wish out into the ether, and we'll see what happens. If anyone at the show is listening, by all means, pitch that next Monday. Okay, what else we got here? So O'Donoghue's magnum opus. At Home with the Psychos, the patriarch of a family of psychos sees financial opportunity in the coming nuclear apocalypse.
So this is O'Donoghue's second swan song, Goodbye to America. Yes. I think this is definitely this is one of the weirdest sketches ever on Saturday Night Live. Anger, revolutionary. This, I remember specifically this sketch frightening me as a child. I was so scared. I could not watch it. And I did not even remember the sketch until it viscerally hit me in the face with Christine Ebersold's mohawk at the top and the shotgun. And I was like, oh my God, I remember being traumatized by this sketch, which is weird because of how much I love this episode and then how much I hated watching this sketch. I was scared of it. So it's weird. It's definitely what Michael O'Donoghue thought absurd comedy was, or punk comedy ethos. And it like most things that O'Donoghue tries to do, if it's not mean-spirited, then it's just weird on purpose. So there's a lot I didn't like about the sketch, but then now I'm watching it more and more over and over in preparing for this podcast. I can see what it is for what it is, and it's just weirdness for weird's sake and just trying to shock the audience. But it never really does shock the audience. I think there's no humor behind the shock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just but it ends with one of those classic Bill Murray inspirational speeches that he was his stock and trade from Meatballs and Stripes. Right. He tries to get the troops together. So for me, I love that moment. I love the moment when Christine Ebersole shoots him for the second time. And he goes, "Hey, what's gotten into you?"
Right. Yeah, like
Uh,
this is just a casual way that she communicates that she's not entirely pleased with him.
yes,
Like it,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
So those are cute little moments, but everything else about the scene is just completely bizarro and flat 40 years
Mhm.
on.
Yeah. Watching this sketch made me realize that I don't like angry humor. Like I don't like watching people yell. Even if there's some joke underpinning it and there's a reason, unless it's like John Candy and Steve Martin. There's very few people that I can just see yelling at each other where I think I'm having fun watching just the bickering and the vitriol and um it it just puts me off for some reason. Um
Yeah.
so in this case, I it's not like I like the characters or I had some sort of understanding of them going into it where if they're gonna just start getting caustic with each other, I understand the game. I understand what's going on and why everybody is just so hard to watch. It just becomes very grating very quickly.
Yeah.
And and I think that's just where it lost me. I think there was an interesting idea in that, he's a shyster. He's always looking for his next scam, and he's figured out that he's going to corner the market on orifice paraphernalia. That is weird and interesting, but it was just surrounded by so much noise that I couldn't invest.
Absurd on top of absurd on top of absurd on top of
Mhm.
absurd on top of absurd. So it becomes like peas in a pod sketch. You got the blind ballerina who French kisses her dad, the suicide
Right.
bomber's terrorist son with conspiracy theories. They all live next to a leaky pet nuclear power plant. The mom's got a mohawk. All that it's just like, and then Doyle Murray comes in and tells them of the nuclear
The
meltdown
impending
that's
doom.
happened,
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
impending doom, and um, it's just doesn't go anywhere
Yeah.
until it just, and then how do we get out of this? Bill Murray write one of his inspirational speeches, you
Yeah.
know, which is up there as far as those inspirational speeches. I mean, it's just as good as the one in Meatballs or the one in Stripes for
Sure.
sure.
The one thing that this sketch says loud and clear is that Bill Murray came to play. Like he's not even a sketch like this
Right.
that I'm sure deep down he kind of knows, I don't know if this is going to work. He's going to
Yeah.
invest and put everything he can into it. So he tried his
Yeah.
best to put it over. That's for sure.
This sketch reminds me of that thing when Jordan Peele writes Get Out. He says, I wrote the movie that I wanted to see.
Mhm.
This is the sketch that Michael O'Donoghue wanted to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
And much like most of what Michael O'Donoghue writes, it didn't agree with me.
Yeah. It felt very indulgent. And
Yeah.
his voice is there, not for the audience sake, but you're right, for his own sake. Okay. Well, let's get off that. Let's talk about our next live sketch. A bum is given a festive Christmas lesson in trickle down economics.
Yes.
What'd you think of this?
Supply side Christmas. This was great.
Yes. Yeah.
This was great. Piscopo and Ebersol have great voices. They're a good comedy team. They were
Mhm.
teamed up earlier in the CIA office, and they work really well together. And on the Tom Snyder Rona Barrett feud.
Yep.
Eddie is in the scene. He kind of plays it for laughs when he sings. I don't know exactly
Right.
what he was doing. He seemed like he was like, I don't know how to sing, so I'm gonna get a laugh instead. But he can sing,
Right.
so I don't. Maybe he's just nervous. 20-year-old Eddie Murphy nervous.
No, I
Um,
think he was intentionally making his voice crack or just do something a little weird to
yeah.
steal the scene a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah.
Bill Murray doing his kind of a mix of Nick the Lounge Singer and his Caddyshack
Right.
hobo character. He can sing, but I think he kind of needs he's a very limited range. I just watched On the Rocks, his movie on Apple TV, and he has a scene where he sings, and in the credits it's music. Bill Murray's musical supervisor, Paul Schaefer. So he even brought in Paul Schaefer to help him sing in that movie.
Mhm.
So I think he's got a very limited range, but he can carry a tune.
Sure.
But the scene itself is a very smart song about
Yeah,
the
it is.
economic priorities that were shifting in the country that Reagan represented, and very in tune. And this is the hot take about this is the satirical hot take that I think At Home with the Psychos or It Came From Beyond was trying to lift itself up to, but didn't really have
Right.
anything to say about those particular issues. But this was great, and I applaud anybody whoever wrote this and designed the sketch. So good on you, mystery writer.
Uh No, this is brilliant. You're absolutely right. Perfect way to frame it in
Mhm.
having a bum who doesn't need a treatise on long-term financial stability. He needs a meal. And
Right.
so making him the obvious visual representation of what you are trying to convey in this sketch,
Yeah.
I think is just perfect. It makes the joke and the lyrics so much stronger to see the exactly why it doesn't hold up in this particular situation. A, a guy needs a meal, he's asking for a handout, and you're telling him, well, no, if we just enjoy our prosperity, eventually
Eventually.
maybe, something good will happen. And he's thinking, well, that's great if I make it through the night. That's pretty potent as far as actually having something to say with a sketch, and then just backing it up with something catchy as hell with really smart lyrics and pulling in all of those, um, the economic jargon that goes along with it. They really created good lyrics to support the whole idea of the sketch.
Yeah,
So end to end, really strong. Really liked it. I thought this was maybe the smartest material of the night.
for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Now, how about the Whiffin Poofs? The Yale Whiffin Poofs. So they do a medley of the Whiffin Poof song because they're the Whiffin Poofs. And then Boar's Head Carol, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. And then they go out on Jingle Bells, accompanied by the SNL cast. And for some reason, they decided they needed to do the pitch bender on them and turn them all into chipmunks. So this performance it runs the gamut. We even get some overlaid gags with their SAT scores. So what did you think of this?
Yeah, this is another thing that SNL doesn't do anymore, which is not pop related musical guests.
Yes.
I can think of, I maybe count them on in the last 20 years, them doing anybody that's not a pop star, or rock star or country star, whoever's at the top of the, I
Right.
think maybe Pavarotti, uh maybe Leon Russell, but certainly not anything like this.
Yeah.
Of course, it's Christmas, and you have these powerful Christmas songs, and then you mix that with the Jingle Bells with the cast, which is very reminiscent of that first episode, the first season Christmas, with the cast doing
Winter
uh,
Wonderland.
Winter Wonderland, which is a great one. They play that every year
Yeah.
at Christmas. I don't know. They could do this one too. I don't know why they don't do this one too. Um, at that time, but at first you're like, why is the Yale Whiffin Poofs in tuxedos on Saturday Night Live? And then they start doing the jokes. They can't have something serious like that without doing jokes on them, which I thought was like, okay. But then the jokes actually were kind of funny the more they got into it. And then the Jingle Bells with the cast, which just feels like just nice and homey, and everybody's together and having fun with
Mhm.
Christmas. And it was nice. I guess I didn't mind it as much as I thought I would going into it. You know what I mean? I think
Mhm.
it had power, it had nice energy, and it had some good laughs and nice family feel at the end. So not bad.
Okay. Well, good. I'm
Certainly
glad
better than the Psychos. Certainly better than the Psychos.
that's true. It does reset the palette a little bit. Um, well, I'm glad you found something to enjoy in it. I have nothing against the Whiff and Poofs, but there was nothing about it that said this is hip or culturally relevant or just anything that I care to see. I get it's the Christmas episode, so you kind of get why maybe they would bring in a choir at this point because, like you said, they had a bit more variety in their bookings back then.
Right.
Now, when they bring in a choir, it's usually because they have to do something somber because there's been a national tragedy or something like that. Like
Right.
you don't get to have fun with it the way that they did here. So that's interesting. My only thought was I liked when the cast comes out at the end and starts singing with them. And I don't think that they should have tried to just layer that last little chipmunk gag on top of it. I would have liked to see them all just do a rousing chorus of jingle bells and leave it at that. So this isn't a comedy piece. This is just a feel good, heartwarming, festive piece. And I think
Right.
that would have been enough. I didn't need the jokes. The overlay jokes earlier were fun enough. But I would have liked to just see the cast a little bit more there, but for maybe another verse and just have it just be festive and not shoot any further than that. That's my critique. But that's all I got on Whiff and
Yeah.
Poofs.
Yeah.
Now, before
Yes.
they had a pre-tape about a pint-sized claymation curmudgeon who menaces some dude. Now, this didn't air on the original broadcast. On the original broadcast, there's a bit more to the Good Nights where Bill Murray is explaining what was happening in Poland.
Uh-huh.
And then on rebroadcast, which is the version that we were working from, so we kind of had to, dissect this and reassemble it to get a sense of what it looked like when it first aired. There was a bit more to the Good Nights. And then on repeat, because what Bill Murray said about what was happening in Poland didn't turn out to be entirely factual, they now had enough time to fit in this pre-tape that they just ran short on before. And so they make that work in the rebroadcast.
That's interesting.
So it's worth mentioning. Yeah.
On the Peacock version, they cut out the first maybe 2 minutes of the Psycho sketch for an NBC special report about what's happening in Poland.
Really?
So that it sets up the context of his speech and the Good Nights.
Very interesting, because we're watching the rebroadcast before they thought about attempting to reassemble that. So yeah, when it went out, they cut in. So they filmed the whole sketch, which is why we see the whole sketch in our rebroadcast version. But the live airing didn't even get the whole Psycho sketch.
They come in the middle. You missed the gunshots and everything on Peacock. So it doesn't. You don't even get the title card of it at Home with the Psychos.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's an NBC special report to let you know. And in case anybody doesn't know, this is the night that the Soviets invaded Poland and took back government from the, I'm trying to remember, the Solidarity Union.
Sure. Yep, let's go with that.
Free Solidarity Union leaders. So Russia invades Poland during the episode. That's what happens.
If people wanted meta, here's your meta. So apparently because of that, this has been, rejiggered a few times over throughout the years. That's interesting because I hadn't seen the Peacock version because I'm in Canada and apparently we're not allowed to see Peacock over here. Maybe someday.
And we're not allowed to see full episodes here.
Yeah. So it is what it is. But for purists, this little pre-tape wasn't part of the show, but now in rewatch, a lot of people that are finding it probably will see this. So it's worth mentioning. Did you have any great thoughts on this pre-tape?
Yes, I did. It's a claymation between a little claymation creature and a human having some sort of like Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote, itchy and scratchy nonsense going on in his apartment, where the claymation guy is the aggressor and the human is getting all the things happen to him. And I thought it was actually funnier than any Mr. Bill I'd ever seen.
Sure. That's a hot take.
Really, yeah. I loved Mr. Bill as a kid, and it's so frustrating to watch it as an adult because I just realized how it is nothing but punching down. It's right up O'Donoghue's. Mr. Bill is right up O'Donoghue's lane of just like punching down, making somebody suffer violently. And this was charming because it was the claymation guy doing the aggressive actions towards the human, and the human getting his foot slammed in the door or whatever it is, the physical humor gag. So I thought it was very sweet and charming and funny, and really inventive. And I liked it. Good on you, T. Hiddle.
Yeah. So I think it was called Fracas, I think was the actual name of the piece if anyone looks it up on YouTube. You're right. It's a reverse Mr. Bill. Instead of, some off-screen person mutilating Mr. Bill, we get the claymation's revenge here with the fork and the shoe and the eggs and the slam in the door. I was amused by this. I have nothing more brilliant than that to say other than I see why they'd want to have this held back in case they came up a couple minutes short. So, fun enough. And that is our rundown.
Nice.
Let's talk moment of the night. What do you got?
Moment of the night. It's so hard. The Spinners was great. I love when Bill Murray says what time and what do I wear, but I think it's this kid in Mary Gross's pre-tape where she says,
I remember in 77, 78. That was Christmas.
Yeah.
And that to me hit home so hard. I don't know why. I'm Jewish. I don't even celebrate Christmas, but that take was so funny to me, and I think that's the moment that hooked me for Silent Live.
Okay.
So that's got to be my moment of the night. Is
Very
the
good.
moment I fell in love with Silent Live.
That it's nice when we have a touchstone that we can
Yeah.
reconnect with after so long. It's funny that you brought up the Black Crowes earlier, because the very first episode of SNL that I ever watched, they were the musical guest in the very early
Oh,
90s. So
yeah.
that's kind of my touchstone. Whenever I see that episode, I remember that performance. For me, I'm going to give it to old Muhammad Ali shows up at the desk.
Yes.
Just a feat of prosthetics and performance, and just a clever piece end to end, and just a lot to like there. And I thought they just really knocked that out of the park. For SNL to be doing that good with their prosthetic work and their characters and their update features this early in the show, I forgot, just how quickly they figured all that out. Because you watch the first couple seasons and it's charmingly bad, the costuming and the prosthetics and all that stuff. You watch the Coneheads and it's just like, okay, is that paper mache? What are we doing here? So to see this and realize, well, that's pretty much as good as what we got going on today. I just respected it. I thought that was a good moment.
Yeah.
Best sketch.
Best sketch. Well, I think my favorite performance was the Spinners. If I had to like pick something from this that just made me feel good from start to finish, nonstop good. But if we're going comedy, I'd have to go with Mary Gross's Kids Christmas. It's such pure, genuine fun. There's no one gets offended. It's not mean. It's just silly seeing kids saying adult things. So great job. I love that piece so much. It spoke to me as a kid and continues to be a mainstay of my blueprint for my comedy career. I love that kind of humor where nobody's being hurt or punched down or even punched. Nobody's getting punched except for Christmas, which can take it.
Yeah. It's just very intriguing to hear how your comedy sensibilities were forged in the fires of this episode. That was the strongest update piece, or definitely right up there with SNL Sports. I'm going with the bum that learns a lesson in trickle down economics through a festive Christmas jingle. Just smart and well performed, and just as an end-to-end win of a sketch that is just clever and charming and makes its point without making you feel like they were so obsessed with making the point that they lost track of the joke. Like, it just feels like they balance both of those competing needs perfectly.
I agree.
Yeah. I think that was a really strong piece.
Stellar sketch. And honorable mention to Tom Snyder. I thought it was also really good.
Yep. Yeah, that was fun. All right. MVP.
Obviously Bill Murray. I think Bill Murray is just doing half court shots every single sketch. He's whatever the opposite of phoning it in is. He is dialed in.
Yeah.
He's dialed in. He is committed. He's taking throwaway moments and making them like completely wonderful moments. He's throwing his heart and soul into this episode. It's probably one of his best hosting outputs that he's done. And I'm start to end, it's Bill Murray's episode, and he owns it.
Yeah. For all those reasons, and one other reason, I think Bill Murray's a great choice. I see him acting against his brother in this episode, and it occurs to me, that's right. It's his brother. Of course he's going to rally. Like, he's going to make sure that his brother's show is, in as much as he can help get his brother's show over, he's going to come and rally and do his job. It's his brother.
Yeah.
How can you not love Bill Murray? So for everything that you said, and just because it just seems so obvious that he wasn't there because he had anything to pitch or he was getting anything out of it other than just going to spend some time with my brother and this crew, and we're just going to put on the best show we possibly can, and I'm just going to throw myself into it. And that, to me, that's beautiful.
Yep.
Yep.
But not enough to save Michael O'Donoghue's job.
No, not quite. I would give an honorable mention to Joe Piscopo. I think he did some solid work tonight as well. But Bill Murray, he's the man. One of my favorites of all time.
Yeah.
On a scale of classic, great, decent, weak, or train wreck? How would you rate this episode?
I think we're at a solid great.
Mhm.
I think there's just enough scenes in there that are stinkers to not be a classic.
Sure.
But yeah, take out the psychos, take out the tales from
Their big opener, their sprawling opener.
their big opener, and everything else. Leave everything else in there, and you got a solid episode.
Yep. I'm not going to harp on it. I feel exactly the same. I think
Yep.
solid musical act, which, always just helps buoy an episode. Solid update, as much as Brian Doyle Murray just may never have found his stride at the desk. Some really fun features. Those are tent poles for any good episode, and I think those were in place. And then you had some fun stuff and a few brilliant things throughout the night, along with a few things that, are just genuinely hard to watch. But the ones that got over, some of them got over big time. So, I'm right there with you. There's some greatness here, especially during this season when, people are just down on the show. For them to turn out some stuff that stands the test of time, I'll applaud that.
Between seasons 6, 7, and 8, this is definitely a standout and probably the best of the bunch.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Well, I think we did justice to that show. Do you have any brilliant thoughts to close out our discussion?
No, I think we hit upon everything that I wanted to talk about. I think I grew up when I first got into comedy. I really enjoyed Michael O'Donoghue and I read his autobiography and really fun. And then as I got older and more mature, I just realized, God, he's so mean. For the sake of being mean, there's so many other ways to make people laugh. Yeah, it's just a fascinating. If you're a fan of Silent Live and the lore of Silent Live, this is definitely one of those episodes to go back and check out. So, highly recommended.
Yeah. All right. So we'll leave it there. Why don't you tell people where they can find ColdTowne's activities as well as Sketchfest?
Yes, you can find me at Dave Buckman on Twitter or Instagram. You can check out at ColdTowne, ColdTowne Theater at the same channels as well. We have a Patreon. You can please feel free to contribute. We also have a Twitch channel where we're doing shows Wednesdays and Fridays and Saturdays, and Twitch TV / ColdTowne TV, as well as Austin Sketchfest coming up April 20th through the 24th on that Twitch channel, where we will have Meg Stalter, Atsuka Akatsuka, and the Alchemy Live podcast with Craig Kukowski and Kevin Pollak. So please tune in for that. Throw us some money as a donation. It's free to stream. So hope to see you on Twitch.
Very good. Yeah, I hope everyone checks it out. Well, Dave, it's been a pleasure as always. I love being able to have you up for what has become an annual tradition where we chat vintage SNL. I always appreciate your insights and the fact that these episodes are so close to your heart. There's a passion there that you bring, and these are always a joy. These are some of the funnest episodes for me to participate in, and that's actually why I kicked Catherine out this week. I wanted to steer the ship and just kind of, do what we do, and you didn't disappoint. This was a lot of fun, and I hope our audience enjoyed having you back. And with that said, thanks again.
Thank you for having me. I have such a good time with you.
Excellent. All right. That's a cast. Thanks to my guest, Dave Buckman. You can connect with Dave on Twitter at Dave Buckman. And thanks as well to our most generous patrons, Sam Bowers, Neil Weinstein, Justin Gardner, Carissa Eubank, Grace Kogan, and Brian Clark. If you're enjoying our show, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever better podcasts can be found. Your subscription helps us grow, and your support is greatly appreciated. We'll be back soon when SNL returns for its spring run. But until then, this has been episode number 131 of the Saturday Night Live Afterparty podcast. I'm John Murray. Good night, and have a pleasant tomorrow.